Hello, everybody. I'm Ana Hernandez, and I'm here to tell you about my first person experience. I'm going to tell you a little bit about a time when I was a very young girl and I had an extremely vivid imagination. My mother was raised by her grandmother in Mexico, and they tended to be extremely superstitious. So, my brothers and sisters and we grew up also being extremely superstitious. And you couple that with a very vivid imagination, like I did when I was very young, and it created a moment in time that was a little traumatic and also very, very, very funny. So, this is my story. Now, I was about 7 or 8 years old when this happened, and our neighbor had passed away. And so I woke up one morning and we went downstairs and I went outside and I noticed that all the ladies in the neighborhood were outside and they were gathered around this elderly woman's home. And just by walking around and listening, we realized, my friends and I, that she had passed away. So eventually, everybody went back home, and my mother started her flurry of baked goods and casseroles and things that you make for the people. And she told my sister and I, go and get the sheets and cover all the mirrors. Now, I didn't think much of it, so we went around and we walked around, my sister and I, and we started covering up all the mirrors in the house. And my parents had this very large bureau, and on top of it was this huge, huge, huge mirror. And my sister and I, fought over who was going to get to climb on top of this bureau. And I won. So I went up on the bureau and I covered the mirror with a sheet. And she told me, you know why she's doing that, don't you? And I said, no. And so I started climbing down. She goes, she covers up the mirrors because that's a door where the ghosts can come out. And I go, that's not true. And she tells me, yes, that's why mom is covering up all these mirrors with the sheet so that the ghosts don't come through, because Josefita, the neighbor, had passed away. And I said, that's not true. And she goes, yes, it is. And I go, So I started thinking, and I kept crawling down climbing down this bureau, and I noticed that the sheet on the top corner had fallen off. And so I kind of scrambled down, and my sister looks at me and she goes, get back up there and cover it up. And I said, no. And she goes, yes, you go. And I said, no, you go. Because I wasn't going to go over where there was a door where ghosts could come out of, because the sheet had uncovered it. Now, my sister was 7 years older than me, and most of the time she could persuade me to do things. But when it came to ghosts, I said no. So I did the best thing that I could do, being the younger sister, which was to run out of the room. And so then we just forgot about it. But in the back of my mind was this nagging feeling that there was an uncovered piece of the mirror in my parents' bedroom. So my mother finished all her cooking, and she did what, people do, which is to go to the next door neighbor and deliver all the goods and give their condolences. And my nosy sister went with her, so I ended up by myself in the house. And okay. Unfortunately, at that moment, it was in the afternoon, and in the summers in the desert, we tend to have these really huge thunderstorms that just kind of roll in and roll out. Well, luck would have it that this thunderstorm comes in and it rolls in. And so I'm sitting there in the living room playing with my dolls, and I start hearing, it starts getting darker. And so I go and I turn on the TV. And then I start hearing the spattering of the rain, and I raise the volume a little bit higher. And then the thunder rolls in. Vroom! So I started thinking. So I raised the volume a little bit higher, and the thunder started again. Vroom! And again, I raised the volume just a little bit higher. And finally, the thunder really rolled in. Then the rain started pouring down, and vroom! I heard this thunder. And I got scared. And so I started praying, and I started thinking, please don't let Josefita come through the mirror. Please don't let her come through the mirror. And the thunder was growling, vroom, and I just covered up my ears and I said, please don't let her come in. And I could tell she was going to come and get me. She was coming. There was a hole in the cover of the cotton sheet where it should have been covered, and I knew she was going to come and get me. So again, the thunder kept rolling, and again, I just kept covering up my ears, and I could hear her footsteps coming down the hallway, and I kept saying, please, please don't let Josefita come get me. Please don't let Josefita come get me. And boom, the thunder kept going, and I just covered up my eyes, and I just kept thinking, please don't let her come and get me. Please don't let her come and get me. And I felt someone touch my shoulder. And at that moment, I jumped out of the sofa. I hit my toe on the coffee table, and I fell to the floor. The whole time I'm sobbing. I look up, and there in front of me is my mother. And of course, my mother is worried. What is wrong with you? And of course, I'm sobbing and screaming, and I'm like, and I couldn't speak. And she just picked me up, and she held me. And I was just so happy that I was in her arms, safe. And I turn around, and I see my sister, and she's laughing. And she is snickering. Now, of course, she's doing it quietly, so my mother doesn't hear. And doing the best thing that a little sister can do is I stuck up my tongue at her. And so that is my story of my rampant imagination and my mother's superstitious beliefs and how they created chaos for my 7-year-old self.